Independent Electoral Commission says it's all systems go for the 2024 general elections, and this is despite the election date not yet declared. CEO Simon Mabolo says the commission has been talking to the president, and he further says the commission will be ready for any date in the window period of May to August next year. Now, our senior reporter ENC's Aviwe Mtila joins us now from the launch in Midrand. And Aviwe, I mean, a lot coming out from the launch in as far as the Chief Electoral Officer Simon Mabolo and Mosotho Miepa, the chairperson, had to say. What were some of the highlights?
Well, basically, the IEC itself is ready for the 2024 national and provincial elections, suggesting that, of course, the 7th democratic elections will be underway anytime between May and August. That's, of course, at the behest of the president, who is still in communications with the IEC. No date set as yet. We heard those numbers that around 23,269 voting stations are ready. In fact, they'll be doing a dry run just on Saturday over the weekend. But we heard that at least 1 million people have registered online, and the majority of them are being the youth between the ages of 20 and 25. Let me bring in John Steenhuisen, who is somewhat of a fugitive to Power to Truth we hear from JJ Show. But maybe just on what we heard here today, we heard that the majority that are online are the youth. Are you certain that you'll get the youth voters on your side?
Well, we hope so. I think that if one looks at the statistics, young voters ages 18 to 35, 40% more likely to switch their vote to a party that makes a compelling offer. I think going into what is going to be the most competitive election in 30 years, I think there's every reason for young people to come out and vote. Every vote is going to count in this next election. We've seen that in a number of by-elections and a number of elections that took place in the local government sphere. Every vote is going to count, and young people need to step up and be part of building and shaping that new future. They can't sit back and be passive about the future. You've got to be part of it, you've got to have your say, and every duty of every citizen should be to come out and vote to make sure they're building a better future for the country.
And the IEC itself was largely criticized in the previous elections of how it handled the elections in its entirety. Do you have faith as the official opposition in its abilities to carry out, a free and fair elections?
Well, obviously, we've been concerned about the funding of the IEC and whether they've had the ability. We heard about new devices that are going to be used in this election. Look, I think it's a matter of trust but verify. And I think the first registration weekend in November is going to be a very good opportunity as a sort of dry run to see just how ready the IEC really are at a local level to be able to ensure that we have a free and fair election and that they are up to the task. So, I think we're certainly trusting what we're hearing today, but the proof will be in registration weekend, and we hope that that's used to iron out any potential problems so we don't have a repeat of what we saw in the local government elections, where large numbers of people were disenfranchised due to systemic failure of the IEC.
Just maybe my parting question, a concern raised by former President Thabo Mbeki, just on how government is failing to provide just normal governance and services to the people, and now relying largely, we're seeing the private sector come into the fore. Is this future of the state of South Africa, where we're seeing a lot of the private sector come in the fore and providing services that government should be providing?
Well, certainly, and where you've seen a failure of government to provide, something has to fill that vacuum. And I think many South Africans are not prepared to sit back and just allow this to happen, to just allow service delivery to collapse. They want to step in and fix things. But I keep saying to big business and to those people who are trying to step in where government's failed, the quickest way to resolve the issue is to vote a new government into power, because that will then be able to drive the reform agenda that is so important for us to be able to get the country off this terrible low growth, high debt, high unemployment trajectory and onto a new one of prosperity, inclusiveness and growth for the country.
Final parting question quickly before I bring in the Freedom Fund Plus. They took a lot of your votes in the previous elections. Are you certain on getting them back?
Well, certainly if I look at the by-election results, the last 15 by-elections, the DA is way ahead of its 2019 and 2021 figures. So I think we're well on track to not only regaining votes that we lost, but also making inroads into areas where we haven't done well in the past. Our by-elections in Nyanga and Port St. John's recently, big growth there for us, and I'm looking forward to taking the campaign to every corner of the country to convince people that if they want change, they've got to vote for that change.
All right, thank you very much. Let me bring in Mr. Cornwall from the Freedom Front Plus. So thank you for joining us at ENCA. IEC says it's ready for the 7th democratic national and provincial elections. Do you believe it's all systems goes from your side?
Well, they say they are ready. It depends what is going to happen in terms of the Constitutional Court finding that the case that is there. We must remember that when we had the general local government elections, I don't think they were really ready, and we saw that there were many problems. People who attended certain voting stations where they were not on the voting roll. For instance, there were not enough ballot papers to vote. So I think they still have a lot to work and to ensure that we're going to have a fair and a just election.
And how do you believe what's playing out in the Constitutional Court judgment reserved on the independent candidates wanting that Electoral Amendment Act to be amended once more? How do you think what bearing will it have in the elections and leading up to the election?
Well, of course, if the Constitutional Court determines that, then the Act will go back to Parliament and certain amendments will have to be done by Parliament. The time is running out. I'm not so sure whether the independents will win their case, but we will have to wait for that. But yes, if we have to amend the bill, or the Act, then we will have an amendment bill in Parliament, and that means that we will speed up the process in Parliament. It is possible.
Okay, and then maybe just lastly, your strategy going into this election. The previous one, you stole a lot of the Democratic Alliance's vote. What are you looking at? Are you looking at taking more of their vote, or what's behind the Freedom Front Plus?
The Freedom Front Plus, we have our own principles, our own policies. We are actually the trustworthy political party in South Africa, because what we said in 1994 when we started, we're still saying that. And we do believe that the voters of South Africa wants to vote for a political party who have those values and stick to those values. We don't change our policies after an election when we have lost votes. And my appeal to the people of South Africa and the voters is to vote for the Freedom Front Plus. We're the reliable political party. We are actually the party trying to keep the different partners together so that we can say we take hands to the people of South Africa and we ask them to take hands with us to ensure that they vote. I am worried that only 26.2 million people are registered at the moment. That means that there are about 14 million people not even registered. And it is true. It is our democracy, and the democracy is only as strong as the people voting in that specific election. And therefore my appeal is, let's strengthen democracy. Let's make a change and save South Africa. And to save South Africa, we have to get rid of the ANC government. Vote for the Freedom Front Plus and its principles, and we will bring it into a coalition to ensure that it is to the benefit of the people of South Africa.
And the concerns raised by former President Thabo Mbeki, who suggests that the failure of governance has led to the private sector coming in and delivering much needed services. We've seen the gift of the givers, just to mention some of them, Discovery, civil society, as well as private businesses coming to the fore and doing what government is supposed to be doing. Is this the future?
I don't hope that will be the future. The future should be that taxpayers should get the worth of their tax-paying money, because they pay tax to ensure that those services must be delivered. Now, they still pay tax, but now they have no choice but to save themselves and their communities. Now they're getting involved in all these other activities like the infrastructure, fixing potholes and all that sort of things. And we say that is actually not fair towards the taxpayers and the people of South Africa. But we appreciate that the people are coming forward and say we're not going to allow the government of the day let everything just get destroyed. And we say we must come forward and stop the decay and then build forward to ensure that we create a future for our children and those after us. Let they, at least when they pay their taxes, they will get the worth of their money.
Mr. Cronenwald, thank you very much for your time. I just want to run you through some of the numbers that we heard here. The voter roll itself standing at 26.2 million people. In fact, I see Tumseni Ndulu, let me bring you in from the African National Congress. Thank you for joining us at ENCA. The IEC says it's ready for the 7th democratic national and provincial elections, but it's been largely criticized previously for how it handled the previous elections. Just your sentiments. Do you have faith that they'll run, a free and fair elections without much hindrances?
Well, I do. I do think that they've handled elections over the past 3 decades very well. It may very well be that there were instances where there would be concerns about the late delivery of ballot papers and the late arrival of some material or material running out and all of that. But I think essentially, to a very large extent, IEC has been very competent, very professional, and very effective in terms of handling elections. And I'm quite certain that, like all of us, they would have learned from whatever mistakes that were committed in the past. And as they presented it here today, I was very convinced that they are ready for us to have free and fair elections in the year 2024.
I just want to talk maybe on even the challenges that are visibly a hindrance ahead of the elections themselves. There's a matter in the Constitutional Court where the independent candidates want that Electoral Amendment Act itself to be amended. Just out of the African National Congress, your standing on what's going on and maybe it possibly delaying elections themselves.
Well, we do hope. I mean, I listened to the IEC here. They were saying that the Concord is yet to deliver this judgment, and hopefully before the end of the year. We do believe that if the judgment is handed down before the end of this year, there will still be sufficient time. Whatever the judgment would have said and whatever that may need to unfold immediately after that judgment, we do hope that there will be sufficient time, if it's handed down this year, for the IEC, for the Parliament, if there's something that has got to be referred back to Parliament, and for all of us to be ready to prepare in such a manner that makes it possible for South Africa once again to hold credible, free and fair elections in 2024. And I'm saying, notwithstanding the fact that there is a matter that is in the Concord, but I'm convinced that as soon as that matter is settled in the court, Parliament is always ready to ensure that they intervene in circumstances where they need to play their ball to ensure that we move smoothly to the elections next year.
As the head of elections, any concerns from your side as African National Congress just ahead of the elections themselves?
Well, the ANC is relatively, at this point, gearing itself to be ready for the elections next year. We've concluded the selection of our public representatives. We are now engaging in the training of our election material on the ground. I'm very optimistic and very, very positive about the experience that one has acquired over the few meetings and few provinces we've attended. The state of readiness of our machinery is coming along very well. We still have a long way to go in terms of improving the momentum and the efficiency of some of our election machinery in different parts of the provinces. And of course, I'm very happy that there is a discernible progress with regard to the work of government around addressing the challenge of load shedding, the energy crisis and load shedding, because it has been a major concern. Whenever we go to campaign and whenever we engage with our people and the lights go off, it becomes a problem, and that gets attributed to the ANC or the ANC-led government failing to deliver on such an important matter that has a direct impact even on the economy and on the security of our country. Now, the work that government has done on that front, and given the fact that, as you would have noticed in the last quarter, the report that was provided by State SA and the report on the economy demonstrate a gradual improvement from the state of our economy post the COVID-19. So those are positive things, positive signals to me that indicate that the ANC will indeed go to these elections much more organized, much more better, without major challenges that our people have been complaining about from the beginning of this year.
Talking about people complaining and criticism, former President Thabo Mbeki suggests that the failure of governance has led to the private sector coming in and providing a lot of the services that are supposed to be provided by governance. Is this the future then, where we're seeing the private sector actively, providing governance where it's failing in the leadership?
Well, essentially, President Mbeki is not the custodian of that view. He, when he was addressing on 2 occasions that I've listened to him, he quoted one of the people who had written or delivered a speech in the US or written an article in which they were advocating. In fact, they were celebrating those people that South Africans are moving away from putting their trust in government and rather doing things on their own, and with the private sector playing a leading role.
But we do see it time and again, not to interrupt you, but we do see time and again even calls from governance asking assistance from the likes of the gift of the givers whenever there are major instances or even floods or whatever of the nature.
So I mean, social transformation in itself is a complex undertaking. Can't be a job of government alone. What we are opposed to as the ANC is the mentality that seeks to suggest that we must do away, we must wither the state, wither government, and focus on the private sector, because me and you know very well that the private sector, its primary objective is a profit accumulation. It has nothing to do with providing services to the society that is required from government and the democratic state. So I was making a point that former President Mbeki is not necessarily a proponent or a custodian of that view, but he articulated as one of the narratives that are being driven in this country by forces that want to do away with the strength of the state and the strength of a democratic government in order for most of the things to be done by the private sector. And I'm saying to you, that cannot be the future we would want. That cannot be the future that we aspire to as South Africans and as Africans, because ultimately it is the democratic state that has the capacity to respond to the needs of the downtrodden, the poor and the marginalized in our country. It will not be the role of the private sector.
Thank you very much. Head of Elections of the African National Congress, still bringing in just different varying political views. Now joins me Action SA Chair Michael Bromo. Thank you for joining us at the NCA. IEC says it's ready for the 7th Democratic National and Provincial Election. Your take on this, given the criticism that it had in the previous elections?
Well, I think certainly it was a good presentation, but I think from an election readiness point of view, we would like to have seen a bit more about the problems in the last election and how those are going to be addressed going forward. But I think from our point of view, we understand that the responsibility must lie with political parties that are going to turn people out to register. The IEC is responsible for providing the framework and for people to come out. But it is for political parties to go and engage voters and give them the inspiration and the motivation they need to come out and register in a country with enormous challenges. And I think that's where Action SA sees its responsibility as a new political party and as a political party that doesn't form part of the political establishment that has failed South Africa and caused so many South Africans to give up.
And then Action SA, the first national and provincial elections, how are you gauging yourself? Because we're already talks of the Moon Pact, which I understand Action SA is already part of.
Multi-party charter for South Africa. But certainly from our point of view, our role as a political party is to bring as many votes as we possibly can to that charter. That means we need to focus on ourselves and we need to focus on the message that we take to the South African people. We've been proven to be a political party that wins support away from the ruling party, and that is why Action SA has such an important role to play in these elections. And our focus will be on running a positive campaign that doesn't speak about other political parties in this election, but speaks about what we can do to improve the lives of South Africans.
Just my parting questions on the views shared by former President Thabo Mbeki on the failure of governance leading to the private sector coming in and then providing those services.
Well, without any question, I think the failure of government has been an increasing trend in South Africa. It is systematic and is taking place across the board, and more South Africans, even as individuals, are having to make up for the failures of government, whether it's in security, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in education. And what we're seeing is a decline in every area of our government. But this is ultimately why we're here, because elections are where governments must account, and elections are where political parties must provide ideas as to how they will deliver change. And this is the critical platform in which we need to speak to the South African people.
All right, thank you very much. The chairperson of Action SA, as they take to their first national and provincial elections, of course, which we expect any time between May and August. Just lastly, let me bring in the IFP President. Mkhulu, thank you for joining us at ENCA. Of course, IEC says it's ready on their side. What's your take?
Thank you very much. The IFP welcomes the readiness of IEC as they have indicated today. We're only hoping that the outstanding matter in court will finalize the process of getting all systems going. The IFP is ready for elections next year, and we will be joining and making a clarion call that is done by all people of goodwill in South Africa to invite all people of South Africa of voting age who are not yet registered, amounting to 13 million, that let us all go and register so that we put ourselves in a position to bring a government in power next year that will be a voice of the voiceless, that will be a solution to the challenges our people are experiencing today. We will also be mobilizing throughout the country the 14 million dormant voters who have lost hope, who say, what is the point of voting? Because we are unemployed, crime is affecting us, corruption is the order of the day. The message is, if you don't participate in voting, the status quo will remain. But if you want to see change, be part of the change. On the 28th of October, in Mpumalanga province, the IFP will be launching the Kungawe program. It is about you. This program says for any change to take place, it is about each and every individual voter to participate in the process. Kungawe says take a responsibility, go and register, go and vote next year. Once you have done that, you will be able to change the government that has failed us. The IFP is ready to be a new government in 2024. We have experience. We know the challenges people of South Africa are encountering each and every day, and we are there to serve them. Therefore, it is about every South African to stand up and take an initiative, vote for the IFP. You will see a change. We are determined to fight crime, to create job opportunities. There shall be no graduates sitting at home under the government of the IFP, because it is a human waste to have medical students and a variety of graduates in South Africa having spent money to graduate them through the education system and condemn them to become unemployed. Our call, therefore, is Bungawe, South African voter, stand up. The elections in 2024 must be a turning point and a watershed moment, as we did in 1994 to remove the apartheid government. It is the turn in 2024 to remove the government that has failed our country.
Any concerns in those elections? It's the seventh democratic elections, the first, though, for the IFP without the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. Any concerns ahead?
We will be dedicating the elections next year to Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. He will be a driving force behind our campaign, as we will be honoring his legacy as we go forward. We are ready, we have mourned enough, and we are ready for a new journey, the new chapter of the IFP without its founder, and every good work that we will be doing, we will be paying tribute to him. He will be a drive and a source of strength to ensure that we move forward as a political party to address the concerns and the needs of our people and also strive for the South Africa he wanted to achieve, a South Africa that is just and is able to deliver in the needs of our people.
All right, thank you very much. The president of the IFP, as they're saying that they'll be embarking on their own campaign starting on the 28th of October. That's this coming Saturday. Of course, that will give an indication that we're that much closer, of course, to the 2024 national and provincial elections. In fact, I see Vuyo Zungula right next to me. That's the president of the African Transformation Movement. Thank you for joining us at ENCA. But the IEC says it's ready for the national and provincial elections next year. Your take on all of this?
Look, Aviwe, there's few things. The first one is that what we know in the country is that there's always a lower voter turnout. IEC should have assured or given confidence to the people to say they are going to address the issue of the lower voter turnout by embarking on voter education programs, especially in the townships and the villages, because in the affluent areas we find that there's a higher voter turnout. However, in the townships and the villages, the voter turnout is very low. The second issue is regarding the electoral processes, whereby you've got ANC-aligned teachers that are presiding officers in the voting stations. They preside over all of the electoral processes. Hence, we found that in the last election, there was a teacher that voted more than 20 times. There's also cases of marked ballot papers that are found close to the voting stations being discarded. Now, without addressing those critical issues that would erode the credibility of the electoral processes, we as an organization were not convinced. Would like to have an IEC that is going to address the critical issues that make people to actually doubt some of these issues. For example, you've got cases whereby you have voting stations whereby if you as a party do not have a party agent, sometimes or to a large extent your votes are not counted. Now, it can't be that we are now going to depend on party agents, whereas the IEC should be independently counting all the votes, and without having a party agent of a certain organization having to be there personally to protect the votes of the organization. So that is why, in our view, IEC must address these issues that erode the credibility of the processes.
All right, thank you very much. Vuyo Zungula is the president of the African Transformation Movement. Just, of course, as we heard, that announcement from the IEC that they're ready from their side for the national and provincial elections in 2024.
We've seen that reaction coming hot and heavy from the opposition parties, Aviwe Mtila, in terms of their reaction. And they seem to be quite confident that the IEC will be able to, of course, deliver on its mandate come the NPE 2024, albeit, of course, some of the challenges that we've also seen previously of some ballot papers coming in late, some ballot boxes being found abandoned elsewhere. We know how the drill went in the last couple of elections. However, it seems they're equally confident that they will execute a successful national and provincial elections come next year. But we'll leave it there for now. Colleague, and we'll be sure to continue getting those reactions amidst what was unveiled at today's IEC media briefing. The slogan, it's your democracy, own it, also being launched by the IEC, including some stats and data here being, of course, offered by its chief electoral officer. And I think quite importantly also to note, just coming up from what Simon Mabolo had to say regarding their online portal, saying they're currently engaging with telecommunications companies to ensure they're given 0 ratings on their facilities so that their online portals will be effective during the day, in the evenings, for all those needing information and wanting to either register or find out more information on this very important event on our calendar come next year, and also leading up to those elections due to those 2 registration weekend drives.